Milstead Museum in Farmington is an important cultural and recreational resource within easy reach of all the cities and towns in central Connecticut. Milstead Museum is a place where art and nature flourish together, just as the family that designed this estate intended. Milstead is a colonial revival house built at the turn of the 20th century and maintained just as it was when the family that built it lived here. Milstead is their outstanding art collection. Milstead is 150 acres of fields, trails, and scenic views. Milstead is May Market and other seasonal events. Milstead is also a beautiful sunken garden, the site of the annual Sunken Garden Poetry Festival. This program and the ones that follow are an invitation to attend this summer's series of poetry and music events.
Welcome to Hill-Stead Museum. If you are a poetry lover or just appreciate an evening of the arts in a beautiful setting, come to Hill-Stead Museum this summer for the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival. People love the informality and outdoor setting of this festival. You can bring lawn chairs or blankets, pack a picnic, or buy dinner and wine from the vendors here. There's an hour of live music first, anything from jazz to folk to classical, and then you can hear some of the best poets in the country read poetry that is relevant and accessible. One of the country's leading poetry events, the festival introduces audience to U.S. and state poets laureate, Pulitzer Prize winners, and other major American poets in the intimate, informal setting of this historic garden. The festival's ongoing popularity is evidence that poetry still holds an important place in American culture, and that poetry has a unique power to remind us of our own common humanity.
When I read first, it hadn't been sunken garden at all. It was just fields. This was a long time ago, and I was always so struck by the camaraderie and the sheer presence of poetry here, and very happy I am to be part of it once again. I'm going to read for 2.5 hours, just because it's that kind of night. We are in the heart of the Mecca of Connecticut poetry, to say the very least, and they draw us all in. So, like I say, 2.5 hours. My last poem is a 15-page poem on the manufacture of cement. So just hang on. Today is Memorial Day, as you know, and I only thought that this morning. I was thinking I better read something that has a touch of that in it. And here's a poem that is a prayer, because we are remembering battles and so forth, remembering soldiers, remembering all that, and what we're really in war, what we're after is peace, of course. What we're waiting for is peace. And this is a little prayer, and it's located in the Middle East, obviously, but of course it could be anywhere, any kind of action what you're after is something that the little epigraph I have from Wallace Stevens here says about the First World War. Peace means these and all things as before. And the poem is called Prayer. Though I know the settled sound these cows are making as they trawl among rushes, buttercups, and sweet grass, cannot be heard under the rubble of cities. Still I can hope the voices out of my neighbour's radio as they vanish among fuchsia flowers and the bees humming from cup to honeycup might find the hidden way to peace, bring ceasefire and silence into the shaken world. Let the smoke settle and the people go indoors again, pick up their dinner things, fill the glass jugs with water, the floured plates with food, taste the olives again, the oranges and dates, the roast lamb on its bed of yellow rice, and call down out of nowhere the usual blessings on the food and the feasters, with no more than the racket of traffic, or the jubilant ramshackle neighbourhood chatter, or the rusty tinkle of goat bells out in the world to disturb them.
Oh.
So that's our chance to being, we want the ordinary world back, I suppose, when we're confronted. I go back to Ireland. I'm from Dublin. I live in the west of Ireland when I'm back there. But these are two little poems about the stuff we were talking about earlier. We're migrants in some way. The world is full of migrants. The Irish is a nation of migrants, exiles, all that stuff, which gets romanticized in its own ways, of course. I noted it, and I was very conscious of it one time. I went back to Dublin years ago, and I saw the swifts flying around overhead, and they come back in the spring as they do here. And I thought, right, they're the migrants, and they were like the rest of us in that way that we do. So it's called Swifts Over Dublin. Stop, look up, and welcome these artful dodgers, high flyers on the wing, these ecstatic swirlers, sons of air and daring, daughters of the slow burn, who twist and kiss and veer, high as kites on homecoming. Survivors, they've put their night sweats by, harrowing darkness in a rumour of wings and companionable squeaking, riding the blast. But now, how they celebrate a comeback, casting high-pitched benedictions down on shopping centres, stray dogs, monoxide traffic. From any point of view, they are beyond me, dark sparks of mystery I must look up to, where they usher the full flush of summer in, highly delighted with themselves and sporting their keen seasonal dominion. When I get back to Dublin, I head for a pub. That's my seasonal dominion. And we do too. That's what we do. This is the other place. You have a given home, then you have a home of circumstance, and you also have a home of choice. This one is my home of choice. It's out in the west of Ireland. It is called Renville, and it is a place when I go back to, there's always that little lift. It's in the country, it's in Connemara. And my place is a small cottage there, but if I get back, and I'm lucky enough to get back when it's a sunny day, then the heart does lift up. And I just read it. It's called Place. And I mentioned old cottages, and I'm reminded when I see old cottages in their ruins of what happened in Ireland in the 19th century, and those abandoned cottages. And I mentioned a pheasant who is, like me, what somebody calls a blokel. They came in the 17th century. I came, of course, a little later, but they too are are blow-ins, I suppose you call them. But as a friend of mine calls me by now, because I've been there 35 years, a blokel. Place. First morning back, there's a faint cap of cloud on the brow of Tully Mountain, flash of a blackbird between sycamore and ash, glint of dew on a few daisies the scythe has spared. Lilies of the valley stand in a battered can. The cover of my mother's prayer book wrinkles with light, and my neighbour's rickety mutt mumbles a crust of stale bread. In early sunshine, the houses across the lake seem solid as chateaus, seem as if they'd stand forever. high-arched, their barns are granaries of light, though the old cottages lie like bones over the open fields. And here, slightly apologetic, comes the cough of the cock pheasant, stepping among potato drills as if he owned the place. Crimson and cinnabar his head, his feathers cinnamon and gold. He will hide in his own life down there, where whins and heather and boggy grass can flourish, and the sunny morning be sheer heaven to him. You find your religion where you can. I'll keep up the kitchen thing with a poem. Since this is the Irish evening, you can't leave Yeats out of an Irish evening, so I'll read this poem of mine called In the Kitchen with Yeats. I've read it before. I've always been struck by the fact that, you know, they talk about Yeats, the big shadow, etc., over Irish poetry. And he's not. He's just a big nourishment. He's a bowl of food in many, many ways. And I prefer to think of poets not as getting in the way of each other, but as feeding off each other in the past, poets. So I got him as far as the kitchen. I always wanted to, he has this epigraph. I'm going to write the epigraph. He said many things. Among them he said this: a poet never speaks directly as to someone at the breakfast table, even when he seems most himself. He is never the bundle of accident and incoherence that sits down to breakfast. I thought, this must have been a sight at breakfast. And I thought I'd try to write a poem called Yeats at Breakfast, but I got him into the kitchen. Since the poet is never the man that sits down to breakfast, never that bundle of bits and pieces, but the composed whole bloke, buzzing iambics behind a closed door, I suppose he wasn't one to linger if ever he visited the kitchen, his sense of smell confined to incense, honey, wine, and other emblematic fragrances. So what would he make of me in this cottage kitchen on his birthday, stirring a sauce for pasta, one hand holding a wooden spoon, the other his collected poems, a fresh edition. With one ear, I listen to the homely little splutter of tomatoes, spices, garlic, and diced onion as they bubble towards their unity of being, while with the other, I can hear the clear, austere music of the wild swans that coo, the ache of its defeat beating through that one lost rhyme each stanza, and through those clean lifelines of his that keep cheating us out of ease, but lead to grace. Wooden spoon tapping the skillet, I close my eyes to get the poem by heart, making its cold, companionable manners my own as long as that music lasts, while all the while the cottage fills to steamy brimming with smells that distill into the air some vegetarian notion of the soul, and fills with the ceremony of sound he stirred into the stock of his own marrow-bone soup to keep us, even in lean times, warm. Now, when I close the book and leave the sauce to simmer, the whole place breathes a single compound smell of garlic, tomatoes, onions, oregano, pepper, cinnamon, wild thyme, all in a base of olive oil and crowned with a leaf or two of bay. Later, wondering how he might have relished the scent of his own ascending dinner, winding up the winding stairs, I'll spoon the wine-dark mixture over fettuccine, sprinkle parmesan, aged 9 months, prop up his book against the bowl, and eat.
I was asked to read tonight, I think, because of my book, Broken Cup, which focuses entirely on my journey with my husband, David McCain, over the last 11 years when he had Alzheimer's. The book does not go all the way to the present. He passed away at the end of December of this last year. but I have some new poems for that. So a lot of these poems are about becoming intimate with loss and impermanence. By intimate, I don't mean cozy. I don't mean Valentine. I mean the kind of intimacy that happens when there is no separation, when the boundaries drop away, when it's just you and whatever the experience is, and it's entirely open. It's hard to get to that place, but it's a becoming, it's a process. Nobody wants to go on that journey, and one of the first poems in the book is called Heaven. It takes place in the autumn when David and I were out doing yard work. We had a new puppy who's in the poem also. David's Alzheimer's had not declared itself yet. I had my suspicions, but we were, without knowing it, on the cusp of a turn. The poem is about wanting to stay in the heaven where nothing changes. When it's good, you don't want it to change, right? Heaven. The leaves are turning, one by one, carried away in the crisp wind. In one letter he penned, Coleridge turned away, calling love a local anguish he meant to leave behind him. Away, away, says the blue and gold day, and no one hears it but the wind, whose law it echoes. The dog has a red ball to chase. You pick a flat, perfect stone for the wall you hope to live long enough to rebuild. I prune briars, pick burrs from the dog's fur. I teach, come and sit. Sit here, a longer sit beneath the cedars. The grass is freshly cut, sun low, all the energy of a summer's day rushing into bulb and root. The dog runs off, returns. The stones balance steeply. Good work, good dog. This is heaven. Sit, stay. This poem is called Losing It. It used to take a half an hour, 45 minutes to get out of the house because we had to gather things, you know, okay. But there's a lot of losing. Losing it. What little I know I hold more dear now that I take the daily reinvention of loss as my teacher. I will never graduate from this college whose MA translates Master of Absence, with a subtext in the imperative, misplace anything. If there's anything I want, it's that more people I love join the search party. You were the one renowned among friends for your luck in retrieving from the wayside a perfect bowl for the kitchen, a hand-carved deer, a pencil-drawn portrait of a young girl whose brimming innocence still makes me ache. Now the daily litany of losses goes like this. Do you have your wallet, keys, glasses, gloves, giraffe? Oh dear, I forgot my giraffe. That's the preferred response, but no, it's usually the glasses, the gloves, the wallet. The keys I've hidden. And when I get frantic, when I've lost my composure, my nerve, my compassion, I have only what little I know to save me. Here's what I know. It's not absence I fear, but anonymity. I remember taking a deep breath, stopped in my tracks. I've been looking for an important document I had myself misplaced. High and low, no luck yet. I was beside myself. So there may indeed have been my double running the search party. Stop, you said gently. I'll go get Margaret. She'll know where it is. But I'm Margaret, I gasped. No. You held out before me a copy of one of my books, pointing to the author's photograph. You know her, you said. We looked into each other's eyes a long time. The earth tilted on its axis, and what we were looking for, each other and ourselves, took the tilt, and we slid into each other's arms, holding on for dear life, holding on. I'm going to read this, I'm a little conscious of time, and I didn't look when I started, so I'm not sure. But I'm going to read the last poem in Broken Cup, and then two new ones. When I wrote this book, David it had not been yet necessary for him to leave home. He was at home, and I was a sole caregiver for 7 or 8 years, and then he went to assisted living, memory care, and then to a nursing home where I was with him every day for a good chunk of the day. And we know the illness is incurable, so we know it's going to end in death. So I wrote this last poem, a good death, imagining what I knew would be coming. David loved William Blake, the poet William Blake, so Blake is in the poem. And the poem also offers what I think is a good practice for living, a good death. May you die as did that good man William Blake, who shortly before broke into singing. Before that, called his wife an angel and drew not just her face, but her whole and spiritual body. Closer to it, he said he would forever be near to care for her. After that, and after the singing, he was still. Of course, when your good death comes, you'll have most likely lost the power of utterance, not a word left to summon, not a scrap of whistled melody. No, you will have been for a time in deepest soliloquy, in an immense silence, immersed in whatever in us is powerful, ancient, free. But since the truth of the imagination for most of us needs to be embodied, may you also, while now there's time, practice dying before you die. May you daily stand outside time's rush, whose rivering is our natural light, and there on the steep lip of what we call darkness, call me angel, if angel I am, draw sunbursts in the rainlit air, sing your heart out. Great being, radiantly still and near.
Good evening. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. The last time I was here, I was about 11 months pregnant with twins. So I'm really excited to be back. My kids are now 5. My twins are 5. And wow, I feel so grateful to hear Sean's poetry and to be sharing the stage. I feel like I'm in the presence of a great poet. I'm so excited for your work. As Kate and I were talking, Wade in the Water is a book that is thinking, if my last book of poems, Life on Mars, was thinking about the future and the afterlife, and space or the universe, Wade in the Water is thinking about history and the earth, the planet, and it's also trying to forge a useful vocabulary for love, not just in intimate and familiar terms, but in civic terms, which I think is what we need to do. So I will read you some poems that address those things in different ways. We're in such a beautiful place. Maybe I'll start with some poems that are thinking about the earth. This is called Hill Country. It's set in Hill Country outside of Austin in Texas, where I had the chance to take a tour of a nature preserve with a man named Bill Johnson. And I went back to my room after that tour before a reading, and I wanted to just write down the names of things that I had seen and the animals I had heard him talk about. And then I found myself writing a poem, and my companion in the poem wasn't Bill Johnson, but God. So this is that poem. God is a regular character in my work. Hill country. He comes down from the hills, from the craggy rock, the shrubs, the scrawny live oaks and dried up junipers, down from the cloud bellies and the bellies of hawks, from the caracaras stalking carcasses, from the clear, sun-smacked soundlessness that shrouds him, from the weathered bed of planks outside the cabin where he goes to be alone with his questions. God comes down along the road with his windows unrolled so the twigs and hanging vines can slap and scrape against him in his Jeep. Down past the buck caught in the hog trap that kicks and heaves, bloodied, blinded by the whiff of its own death, which God, thank God, staves off. He downshifts, crosses the shallow trickle of river that only just last May scoured the side of the canyon to rock, gets out, walks along the limestone bank, castor beans, cactus, scat of last night's coyotes. Down below the hilltops, he squints out at shadow. Tree backing tree. Dark depth the eye glides across, not bothering to decipher what it hides. A pair of dragonflies mate in flight. Tiny flowers throw frantic color at his feet. If he tries, if he holds his mind in place and wills it, he can almost believe in something larger than himself, rearranging the air. He squints at the Jeep, glaring in bright sun, stares a while at patterns the tall branches cast onto the undersides of leaves. Then God climbs back into the cab, returning to everywhere. Thank you. The world is your beautiful younger sister. Seeing her as seldom as you do, it doesn't change. The ire, the shame, the fists you must remember to smooth flat, just thinking what they did, what they promised, then took. Those men who offered to pay, to keep. The clan of them lording it over the others like high school boys and their kid brothers. Men with interests to protect and mute marble wives. Men who let her beam into their faces, watching her shoulders rise, her astonishing new breasts, making her believe it was she who gave permission. They plundered her youth, then moved on. Those awful, awful men. The ones whose wealth is a kind of filth. I'll read two more poems. One, this next one I like to read because while I really believe that poetry does urge us toward our best selves, our most thoughtful, rigorous, empathetic, and compassionate selves, it also allows us to bear witness to our real, humble, flawed selves. And so this is a poem that does that, lest you think that I figured things out. Charity. She is like a squat old machine, off kilter, but still chugging along the uphill stretch of sidewalk on Harrison Street, handbag slung crosswise, and I'm guessing heavy. And oh, the set of her face, her brows profound tracks, her mouth cinched, lips pressed flat. Watching her bend forward to tussle with gravity, watching the birth she allows each foot, as if one is not on civil terms with the other, watching her shoulders braced as if lashed by step after step after step, and her eyes' determination not to shift or blink or rise. I think I am you, one day out of 5. Tired, empty, hating what I carry, but afraid to lay it down. Stingy, angry, doing violence to others by the sheer freight of my gloom. Halfway home, wanting to stop, to quit, but keeping going mostly out of spite. And I'll close with this poem, which I asked what it might feel like to devise a new myth, something that could be useful right now. And this is the poem that I came up with. But I invite all of you who are poets to do the same thing. Write the myth that we need right now. An old story. We were made to understand it would be terrible. Every small want, every niggling urge, every hate swollen to a kind of epic wind, livid the land and ravaged like a rageful dream. The worst in us having taken over and broken the rest utterly down. A long age passed, when at last we knew how little would survive us, how little we had mended or built that was not now lost. Something large and old awoke. And then our singing brought on a different manner of weather. Then animals, long believed gone, crept down from trees. We took new stock of one another. We wept to be reminded of such color. Thank you.
I'm going to read, I think, a part of a poem called Perception Management, which is an abridged list of operation names from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, just to give us a sense of this language in a kind of onslaught. Perception Management. Antica Babylonia, Baghdad, Basti, Abilene, Suicide Kings, Gun Barrel City, God Help Us, Army Santa, Cave Dwellers, Rock Bottom, Plymouth Rock, Rat Trap, Cow Pens, Baghdad is Beautiful, Backbreaker, Block Party, Swashbuckle, Swarmers, Punisher, Beastmaster, Flea Flicker, Firecracker, Lightning Hammer, Iraqi Home Protector, Tombstone, Pile Driver, Bel Huria, Enjoy Freedom, Bone Breaker, Iron Reaper, Spring Break, Rocket Man, Gladiator, Outlaw Destroyer, Dirty Harry, Unforgiven, Raging Bull, Thundercat, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Drone. The poem begins with an epigraph by Frank Bedart, written in the voice of Nijinsky. Let this be the body through which the war has passed. Somewhere I did not learn, mow down, or mop up. Somewhere I wouldn't hear, your father must come with me, or I must fingerprint your grandmother. Can you translate, please? The FBI has my cousin's computers. My father says, say whatever you want over the phone. My father says, don't let them scare you. That's what they want. My mother has a hard time believing anything's bugged. My father and I always talk like the world listens. My father is still on the bus with contraband papers under his seat as uniforms storm down the aisle. It was my job to put a cross on each home with dead for clearing. It was my job to dig graves into the soccer field. I wrote red tracksuit. I wrote Shahida, headless, found beside sad mosque, buried in the same grave as the above. I wrote unidentified fingers found inside Oldsmobile car. I wrote their epitaphs in chalk. From my son's wedding mattress, I know this mounds his room. I dropped a knee and engaged the enemy. I emptied my clip, then finished the job. I took 2 steps in and threw a grenade. I took no more than 2 steps into a room before firing. In Haditha, we cleared homes Fallujah style. My father was reading the Quran when they shot him through the chest. They fired into the closet, the kitchen, the 90-year-old, the stove. Just where was I? Una a una tu cara en todos los buses urbanos. Here lie the mortal remains of one who in life searched your face. Call me when you get home. Let's miss an appointment together. Let's miss another flight to repeated strip searches, that Haditha bed with magenta queen sheets and wood-shelved headboard, and blood splattered up the walls to the ceiling. They held each other. They slept on opposing ends, wishing one would leave. Mother doesn't know who I am anymore. I write, Mustafa Muhammad Khalaf, 15 months old. I write, here lies an unknown martyr, a big security guard with a blue shirt found near an industrial area with a chain of keys. Martyr unknown, only bones. They ask if I have anything to declare, then limit my response to fruits and nuts. An American interrupts an A and B conversation to tell me, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. He strikes me as a misstep away from, she was asking for it. What did you expect after fishing pop-off from a trash bin? What did you expect after accepting a marbled palace? They drag the man who killed my uncle out a hole. They inspect him for ticks on national television. No one in my family celebrates. When the FBI knocks, I tell them, I don't have to do anything I don't want to do, and they get a kick out of that. She just laid there and took it like a champ. She was dying for it. At a protest, a man sells a shirt that reads, my dick would pull out of a rock. My mother tape records my laugh to mail bubble wrapped back home. My mother records me singing Ye Shab Mahtab Mahmiya Tu Khab. I am singing the moon will come one night and take me away side street by side street, sitting on a pilled suburban carpet or picking blue felt off the hand-me-down couch, the displaced whatnots. I practice the work of worms, how much I can wear away with no one watching. 2 generations ago, my blood moved through borders according to grazing and seasons, then a lifeline of planes. Planes fly so close to my head, filled with bomblets and disappeared men. Scaffolding sprouts nooses, sagging with my dead. I burn my finger on the broiler and smell trenches. My uncle pissing himself. Shopping bags are legs, there's half a head in the gutter. I say, hello, NSA, when I place a call. Somewhere a file details my sexual habits. Some tribunal may read it all back to me. Gole sorgi, I know the cell they will put me in. They put me onto a crooked pile of others to rot. Is this what happens to a brain born into war? A city of broken teeth, the thuds of falling? We have learned to sing a child calm in a bomb shelter. I am singing to her still.
It's a great honor to be here and to read with an all-time hero that Solmas is. Her poetry is dope. Buy her book. Yeah, it's dope to be here with you. Okay, I'll read a few poems. And I'll start with this poem that I always start readings with. And it's to my grandma. Tu abuelita Nelly. This is my 14th time pressing roses in fake passports. For each year, I haven't climbed Marañón trees. I'm sorry I've lied about where I was born. Today, this country chose its first black president. Maybe he changes things. I've told Mom I don't want to have to choose to get married. You understand. Abuelita, I can't go back and return. There's no path to papers. I've got nothing left but dreams where I am the parakeet nest on the Flor de Fuego, the paper boats we made when streets flooded, or toys I buried by the foxtail ferns. Do you know the ferns I mean? The ones we planted the first birthday without my parents. I'll never be a citizen. I'll never scrub clothes with pumice stones over the big cement tub under the almond trees. Last time you called, you said, my old friends think that now I'm from some town between this bay and our estero, and that I'm a coconut, brown on the outside, white inside. Abuelita, please forgive me, but tell them they don't know shit. And so I hadn't been back to my country until a month ago. And this is my first reading being back. And it took me 19 years to get there, and I'm still processing shit. I saw my grandma again, and now I returned, quote unquote, legally. I have a green card now. So a lot of shit has changed. And yeah, it's weird. The first time I got to this country, I crossed the desert, and this time I took a picture of the plane as it was crossing the border. So it's, yeah, a lot more poetry is yet to be written about that stuff. And yeah, my country, it was weird being back over there as the immigrant children thing was happening here, because it's weird being here as I heard news about my country. So I had this flip side. And sadly, this next poem is still very much true. El Salvador. Salvador, if I return on a summer day, so humid my thumb will clean your beard of salt. And if I touch your volcanic face, kiss your pumice breath, please don't let cops say he's gangster. Don't let gangsters say he is wrong barrio. Your barrio stain you with pollen. Every day, cops and gangsters pick at you with their metallic beaks, and presidents guilty. Dad swears he'll never return. Mom wants to see her mom, and in the news, black bags. More and more of us leave. Parents say, don't go. You have tattoos. It's the law. You don't know what law means there. But what do they know? We don't have green cards. Grandparents say, nothing happens here. Cousin says, here it's worse. Don't come, you could be a stupid Salvador. You see our black bags, our empty homes, our fear to say the war has never stopped, and still you lie and say, I'm fine. But if I don't brush Abuelita's hair, wash her pots and pans, I cry. Tonight, how I wish you made it easier to love you, Salvador. Make it easier to never have to risk our lives. And this is from the long poem titled June 10th, 1999. And for a lot of immigrants, we have this, like, we remember our birthdays and we remember this date, which is the official crossing date. And it's stamped on any immigration form that you fill out. So that was mine. It's June 10th, 1999. And it's long, but this is the last poem that I wrote before I had to turn this book in. And I wrote it the day after Trump got elected. And it is what it is. Obama was as bad towards immigrants. People forget that. Okay. I wasn't born here. I've always known this country wanted me dead. Do you believe me when I say more than once a white man wanted me dead? A white man passed a bill that wants me deported, wants my family deported. A white man, a white man, a white man. Not the song I wanted to hear driving to the airport today. The road, the trees, the signs, the sky, the cars, the walls, the lights told me, we want you out, 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 out. Another thing, I only left my house 4 times because I was so scared. Because it's a war zone. There were soldiers that walked up and down the street with M16s and M4s every day. So that's the shit that people are fleeing. So just remember that. Anyways, instructions for my funeral. Don't burn me in no steel furnace. Burn me in Abuelita's garden. Wrap me in blue, white, and blue. A la mierda patriotismo. Douse me in the cheapest gin. Whatever you do, don't judge my home. Cut my bones with a machete till I'm fine as dust. Wrap my pito in pennies so I dream of pisar. Please, no priests, no crosses, no flowers. Steal a flask and stash me inside. Blast music, dress to impress. Please be drunk, miss work y pisen otra vez. Bust out the drums the army strums. Bust out the guitars guerrilleros strummed and listen to the war inside. Please, no American mierdas. Carouse the procession dancing to the pier. Moor me in a motorboat, de veras que sea una lancha, driven by a 9-year-old son of a fisherman. Scud to the center of the estero de Jaltepec. Read como tú and toss pieces of bread. As the motorboat circles, open the flask, so I'm breathed like a jacaranda, like a flor de mayo, like an alcatraz. Then forget me and let me drift. Thank you.
I'm arguing with my set list. Let's do another love poem. Why not? I think this is the least I've actually yelled in a show ever. It must be that all the poems with curse words in them are the screamy ones. This poem is called Maybe I Need You. It's a very old poem. I may not know the words, but that's okay. Just holler out something loving and beautiful if I forget. The winter I told you I think icicles are magic. You stole an enormous icicle from a neighbor's shingle and gave it to me as a gift. I kept it in my freezer for 7 months, to the day I hurt my foot and needed something to reduce the swelling. Love isn't always magic. Sometimes it's just melting, where it's black and blue, where it hurts the most. Last night I saw your ghost pedaling a bicycle with a basket towards a moon as full as my heavy head. And I wanted nothing more than to be sitting in that basket like E.T. with my glowing heart glowing right through my chest and my glowing finger pointing in the direction of our home. 2 years ago I said, I never want to write our breakup poem. You built me a time capsule full of big league chew and promised to never burst my bubble. I loved you from our first date at the batting cages, when I missed 23 balls in a row and you looked at me like I was a home run in the 9th inning of the World Series. Now every time I hear the word love, I think going. The first week you were gone, I kept seeing your hand wave goodbye like a windshield wiper in a flooding car. In the last real moment, I believed the hurricane would let me out alive. Yesterday I carved your name into the surface of an ice cube, then held it against my chest till it melted into my aching pores. Today I cried so hard the neighbors knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to borrow some sugar. I told them I left my sweet tooth in your belly button. Love isn't always magic, but if I offered my life to the magician, if I told her to cut me in half, so after that I could come to you whole and ask for you back, would you listen for this dark alley love song? For the winter we heated our home from the steam of our own bodies. I wrote you too many poems. I know language I did not yet know how to speak, but I know now it doesn't matter how well I say grace if I am sitting at a table where I'm offering no bread to eat. So this is my wheat field. You can have every acre, love. This is my garden song. This is my fist fight with that bitter frost. Tonight I begged another stage light to become that back alley street lamp that we danced beneath. The night your warm mouth fell on my timid cheek as I sang, maybe I need you, off key but in tune. Maybe I need you the way that big moon needs that open sea. Maybe I didn't even know I was here till I saw you holding me. Give me one room to come home to. Give me the palm of your hand. Every strand of my hair is a kite string, and I've been blue in the face with your sky, crying a flood over Iowa so your mother can wake to Venice. Lover, I smashed my glass slipper to build a stained glass window for every wall inside my chest. Now my heart is a pressed flower and a tattered Bible. It is the one verse you can trust. So I'm putting all of my words in your collection plate. I am setting the table with bread and grace. My knees are bent like the corner of a page. I am saving your place. Okay, so I haven't read this poem in so long, but I grew up in rural Maine, and when I'm driving through this part of the country, it reminds me of it, and so I wanted to read this very old, just soft, sweet poem. I'm a little nervous it has the F word in it, but I'll hopefully skip it. No, I'm not going to. I'm gonna prove to myself that I can do a whole set. Oh, sorry, that's the sleeping music. So I'm gonna do Crabapple Pirates, just to give these folks a break from my heavy heart.
We want you to be you. Yeah.
Oh, I am. Trust me, I have joy in me too. I have to, for my own good, for my own spirit, not leave this place crying. Yeah. Okay, sweet little poem. This is called Crabapple Pirates. We were chubby-faced school kids, Snicker bar windpiped, crabapple pirates, backward baseball capped, knee-scraped snow angels, Dukes of Hazzard dreamers, bumper car bodied salaman catchers, Michael Jordan believers. I couldn't fly, but my hang time was 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Smart, mean kids were stupid. Books were trees cut down. I was a tomboy in love with Malcolm Cushion. He had a birthmark in the shape of Canada on his left cheek. The teachers didn't trust him. His mother was the accidental broken tooth in a bar fight. I had one black friend. Her name was Erica. She had a jackknife. She carved a gash into the center of her palm, another into mine, pressed our hands together, and asked if I thought it would turn her blood white. I couldn't read her fear or hope. I thought history was over. I cried during the national anthem. Once I found a butterfly's wing on the sidewalk. I wanted to keep it, but I didn't. I knew there were things I should never find beautiful, like death and girls. On Saturdays, I walked around town with a wheelbarrow, collecting aluminum cans. On Sundays, my father paid a penny for every cigarette butt I'd pick up in the driveway. I was picking up cigarette butts when Tommy Chambers punched my tooth out. I spit on his bike seat and beat the crap out of his older brother. I started writing songs, recorded them on my boombox, and mailed the tapes to the local radio station, but they never played them because they never had good taste. My mother did. She was a secretary. Her fingernails were red, and she loved my father, who after the war became a mailman. When I was a baby, my mother would carry me to the post office and weigh me on the postal scales. Once, years later, I got lost in the mail. The next day I came home from college and corrected my father's grammar. When I was 10, my mother had another daughter. I'd heard babies sometimes die in their sleep, so at night, when my parents went to bed, I'd put on my Karate Kid kimono and sneak into her room to guard her heartbeat. The heartbeat thieves didn't find her for 15 years. At 11, I discovered beer. At 14, I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. At 19, I nailed my palm to Amanda Buckner's vagina, actually drooled on her breast, and said yes so loud God couldn't disagree. But my family did, so I lost them for a while. And in that while, my Uncle Barry lost his fingers to the paper mill. My Uncle Peter lost his liver to Vietnam. My mother lost her legs to God's will. In her will, I inherit everything. The 17 photographs we didn't lose in the fire, all of them with charcoaled edges. My mother holds them to her chest and tells me she can still smell the smoke. I tell her I will guard them well. My father's freckled shoulders, my sister's brown eyes, my mother's patient hands buckling my tiny blue suspenders that one December when we built a bonfire in the middle of the frozen lake and I skated around the flames with my snowsuit's frozen zipper sticking to my tongue. My mother said, "Smile for the camera." I can still remember the flash and that enormous fire with the ice beneath it that didn't even crack. Thank you.